Welcome to the Resiliency of the Human Spirit podcast, where we share all about human triumphs for the collective's healing and empowerment. I am your host, Priscilla Hanley. My guest today is Lauren Dionysius. Lauren is a baby soul communicator and a former neonatal intensive care unit registered nurse who connects women with the wisdom of their babies and children's souls from preconception to early childhood, including loss. She is passionate about sharing the soul's unique journey, which can provide so much insight into why something did or didn't happen, and how we can best support our past, present, and future children's journeys. Their wisdom encourages us to stretch beyond the edges of our beliefs and open our hearts to different perspectives around life and death. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Lauren on right now. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Priscilla. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for taking the time to be with our audience today. And I gotta say, I am so excited to talk to you today because I am extremely fascinated with this intriguing topic about communicating with baby souls on the other side. So I will just want to dive right in and ask you to start to share your story on how everything started for you.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I was a registered nurse. So I worked in the neonatal ICU for about 20 years. So yeah, it was, a fairly normal left-brained registered nurse, very clinically focused, research focused, evidence focused. But it was also a really draining area to work in, not just physically with the hours of shift work, but emotionally as well, dealing with very sick and unwell and premature babies was emotionally draining. And also, like any ICU, not all who are admitted are discharged. And so it was also dealing with the loss of these babies as well, which I found was the hardest part of my job, to the point that after about 8 years, I left. I thought I just need to take a break. So I packed my bags and I went to Africa. And I lived over in Africa for about 7 or 8 months before returning to Australia. Yeah, and during that time, I'd had a whitewater rafting accident in the Zambezi River and came close to my own death while being in the water, in the rapids, being pushed about by rocks. And for many years, I thought it was a panic attack. At that point, I didn't believe in, things like the afterlife or, I had been brought up as a very strict Christian girl in a very traditional Christian family. And so, sort of having that was my context, I think, for life and for death. And so yeah, I didn't think much of it, but at the time, but in hindsight, looking back, it was after then, after I got back from Africa in 2012, that I started to, just dabble in more spiritual things like yoga and meditation. And, I started studying Buddhism a little bit as well, and energy healing therapy. And like, there was all these sorts of modalities that suddenly I was more interested in, that I'd never really even looked at or thought about before I went to Africa. So so then in 2016 my worlds literally collided. So I was doing all this like spiritual personal development, but also energy work as well, like, I guess in my personal life. But then I was still working, obviously, in this very clinical left brain, science oriented workplace. Even though when I returned from Africa, I worked in another area of nursing. I still didn't want to work with the babies. I still didn't want to be drawn back into that world and those emotions as well. Like it was so hard for me to deal with that. But after about 3 years of being back in Australia, there was just this nudge that I just kept feeling about going back to the nursery. And so, I started slowly. I started, instead of going back into ICU, I started in the well baby nursery, where babies may just be like a little bit small or a little bit premature or just needing a little bit of observation after they were born. So it wasn't really dealing with sick babies. And so I'm like, that's okay, that's okay. And then I moved. I moved to a big city. And what happened is when I was working in the equivalent well baby nursery there were colleagues there who I'd worked with previously before I went to Africa, even though it was a different hospital at the time, who knew my skill set, knew my experience. And so just every now and then I'd start to be pulled from the well baby nursery back into the ICU for staff shortages, or, they'd have unexpected sick leave, or
Mhm.
they become unexpectedly busy. And so it was just gradually I sort of got, pulled back into the ICU, which wasn't planned. But I remember thinking, like, why am I back here? And if I'm going to be back here, then things need to be different, because I can't keep going to Africa whenever things get hard, and I
Right.
and I can't deal with my job. So yeah, so in 2016, about it would have been about 6 months, I think, after being back in the ICU, in the neonatal ICU, yeah, I started like having these experiences, and my worlds literally collided one night on a night shift where I started seeing pictures around babies. And, I was still relatively left-brained at this point, and hadn't really had a lot of the spiritual experiences, especially outside of, meditation and yoga and these sorts of things. And so I thought, I'm just tired. I've done too many night shifts. I just need to take some time off. And so, I can't remember exactly how long I took off, but it was maybe a week or two I took off from work. I thought, okay, I just need to rest. I need to sleep better, eat better, all of these
Mhm.
things. Going a little bit crazy from stress. Yeah, but when I returned to the nursery, it just kept happening. And so over a period of 5 years, then from 2016 to about 2021, I was literally having a foot in each world. And I was having these, I was still obviously wearing my clinical hat and having to do all of those like nursing
Mhm.
clinical tasks, like as part of my role. But parallel to that, at the same time, I was not only seeing pictures around babies now, around their cots, but I was also hearing things from them. And I was starting to feel things in my body when I touch these babies. And then later something would be diagnosed. Like I remember picking up a baby and getting really severe pains in my stomach. And then a day or two later, this baby has deteriorated, and they've done an x-ray, and this baby's had a gut obstruction. So there was all these like different things started to happen that, there's only so long you can write those off as
Mhm.
coincidences,
Right.
which is what my like thinking brain, logical brain wanted to do. Yeah, so at the beginning, I guess, I just kept like looking at these experiences. I was curious about them, but I wasn't really listening, because it's, when you're in that environment, it's not like you can share these sorts of experiences with your colleagues, or even say things like with that baby. I couldn't have just gone to a doctor and said, hey, we need to do an x-ray on this child.
Mhm.
At that point, there wasn't any clinical signs that anything was going on with this baby's gut. And so it was, yeah, it was something I sort of was quite secretive, and something that I almost went out of my way to hide from my colleagues, purely because of the environment that I was in. But I guess it got to a point where, it become almost like an ethical struggle for me, because, the people who needed to hear this information the most was the parents of these babies. But
Mhm.
again, being in the role that I was in, I couldn't share any of this information with these families and these parents, even though I know in hindsight, looking back, it would have really helped them on their journey, having a sick baby or an unwell baby in the ICU, unexpected, very traumatized, a lot of emotion, a lot of blame and guilt and
Mhm.
shock, and, all of these things. But I wasn't able to share that. And it got to a point in 2021 where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'd gone on by this point to have a lot of really profound spiritual experiences, like babies coming to me, like even on my days off, babies that I was caring for in the ICU. I had 3 shared death experiences with babies that I was caring for and who subsequently did not survive this world. And it really wasn't until I had those experiences in about 2018 that I started to really take notice and really start to listen more to the information I was receiving. And it was no longer just about, oh, that's interesting, but it literally changed how I cared for the babies clinically. It changed my perspectives around life and death. It changed how I touched these babies, how I spoke to these babies. It made me a lot more aware of my own energy around these babies and learning what they were absorbing from me when I acted or behaved or my energy was in a particular place. So yeah, so I see that period of time as like, these babies taught me so much. They taught me so much about their world, and they taught me so much about their journey and why they come and why they don't come, why they leave again. Some of my most profound spiritual experiences after Africa were with the babies who did not survive. And they just, yeah, taught me so much about the journey of the soul and this whole, I think, process that we take advantage. There's this sense of like we just take it for granted. I think this coming to earth, not realizing that it's part of like a much bigger picture and a much bigger puzzle, and we're only seeing a tiny part of that. And so what these babies taught me was, when I can zoom out and look at this bigger picture and get like a deeper understanding of what's going on and what their journey is about, then it made caring for these really sick, unwell, often traumatized babies a lot easier for me. And I've since gone on now. I left the hospital in 2021. It just got to this point where I'm like, I can't continue to not share this information anymore. Like, I need to be able to share it freely with parents who need this information and can be supported and soothed and comforted by this information. So I left the hospital then and have been out of it for a couple of years now. And yeah, and now just being able to freely share this wisdom that these babies are willing and ready and eager to share with us, so that not only that we can provide some comfort and some peace around our own journey, from preconception to childhood, but also how we can best support these children, how we can support their conception, how we can support them during pregnancy and in preparation for birth, how we can help their soul adjust once they've been born and once they're already earthside, as well as growing up through childhood, like how we can best support them. But what I love about this work is it's their own soul, whether they're in spirit or earthside, is what's guiding the process, which takes the guesswork out of it all, and us trying to literally guess and trial and error with does this work. Instead, we can directly tune in and connect with them and say, hey, what is it that you need right now, or what can we do to support you? So yeah, that's it, I guess, in a nutshell with my journey. So yeah,
That's
it's been quite a
fascinating.
wild ride.
So, what are they telling you? Why do they choose to come to Earth, to such a difficult and dense reality? What are their reasons for coming here?
Yeah, well, that was probably, was definitely one of my biggest questions too. And I think when we're looking at coming to Earth or incarnating anywhere as a soul, where I still believe, I know it's a bit cliche, but it's about coming to Earth to learn. And in my experience, like all of us, those of us who are adults now as well, but also babies who are preparing a life here on Earth, they're coming here to learn about something, to help balance an experience that they may have had in a previous life, whether that's around themselves personally or around like relationships with someone else. They're coming here to change humanity. That's a big part, especially like this current generation of kids who are being born at this time. And I would say probably in the last 3 to 5 years, a big part of their mission or their journey is to create change on Earth. You know, they're coming here to, and we're seeing it, or we're already seeing education systems change, and how parents choose to parent their child is starting to change, and what may have worked in previous generations is not working as well with the current generation. So they're bringing change in through this generation on so many different levels. You know, they're coming here to not only to learn for their own soul's journey, but to, as adults receiving them, they're coming to help us to learn and grow as a soul as well. And you know, through the different challenges, or the different themes that they are bringing through with them around this learning and growth. They're forcing, in many ways, or at least encouraging us as the adults at this time to step up as well. You know, not only personally, but in a much wider context as well. So yeah, so there's lots of reasons that they come, and it's very individual to that soul, but to each soul that's coming through. But yeah, there's definitely a theme as well when we look more at the collective energy at this time, and the future for humanity. You know, a lot of these kids have a really important role in that, as do we as well.
Right. I feel that there is a huge misconception when we look at a baby. We tend to think that their soul is new or innocent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, the baby's soul might be an ascended master on the other side, a highly evolved soul, right? So,
Yeah.
what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, and I think it is a very common misconception that, you know, you look at this newborn baby and think it's like so pure and so new. And it is, right. It is to the earth at this time and this incarnation. And I think because this is a soul that has newly incarnated to earth, they're still learning to be on the earth. They've literally
Mhm,
only just arrived. And so they have brought with them that, you know, what we're feeling when we look at a baby is where we're sensing more their soul's energy rather than necessarily their humanity, because they are so new on the earth as far as time. They haven't been here this long
mhm,
at this time, so their energy does tend to be a more high vibrational. And I think we misconstrue that as being these like pure, kind of clueless beings, like these
mhm,
newborn babies that can't say anything, do anything. They're kind of helpless. But, you know, in reality, and what I've learned through this work and on my journey, is that especially the children coming through these days, they're so wise. Like every soul that comes through is wise. You know, whether that wisdom has been curated from previous lifetimes here on earth, or whether that wisdom has been curated from previous lifetimes elsewhere. Like I do believe that earth is not the only place for a soul
mhm,
to incarnate, especially at this time. Like the kids coming through, and I hear this so often from mothers, is that it's like their wisdom is beyond their chronological age. You know, that you can have like a 5-year-old that might be talking at times like a 20-year-old or even older. They have this sense of wisdom. And I think it's really important that we begin to recognize this in babies, and treating them that way, rather than kind of, and you know, we don't do this intentionally, but I think in some ways we sort of write them off when they get here as being clueless and
mhm,
helpless, and they don't know anything and they're brand new. It's like a clean slate, where they're not like that. They had not only do they have this wisdom, but they have so much experience. You know, they've got, you know, who knows how many past lives are behind them, and the not only the wisdom and experience, but sometimes like the energy and the imprints they've picked up from those previous lives, they're bringing in with them. They're also bringing in a really high level of awareness of the soul and the spirit journey, much higher than most of us. Because, you know, with us, for most of us, it's sort of that concept of us being a soul in a human body kind of gets wiped out by society, depending how we're brought up, and
mhm.
I guess in what time. Like we lose a lot of that awareness, or we're almost trained to forget in many ways. or conditioned to forget. And so then we get to our 30s, 40s, 50s, beyond, and we're like, start to remember this. Whereas these children are coming through often with the majority of that awareness and insight and wisdom intact. And so yeah, I think it's important that we start to shake up this misconception and see these babies as the wise, mature souls that they are.
So you mentioned that when they come in, they're really at a high vibration, high frequency. So I'm just wondering, with the Earth experience, with it being so dense and so difficult, as they grow up, in their Earth life, does the frequency get dumbed down a little bit? Do you know
It
what I mean?
does.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. And it does. And I think that's part of being a human. And I also think it's a necessary part of being a human. I think if we continue to sort of float around in that high vibration, then we can be very ungrounded and we can struggle with those everyday human things that we need to do as being humans here on earth in that more 3D world. So, and the soul, when it comes to earth, it has an understanding of that. It has this knowing that I do need to, go through this process of transition or adjustment that for most people, I was going to say, takes several years, but I wonder if we're always going through that process of adjusting, our whole time throughout our life.
Mhm.
It's that constant adjustment. So, but yeah, so that vibration does drop a little bit, but it's not in a bad way. Like, I don't see it like that. I see it more as a necessary way to be a functional human here on the earth, because that's what that soul has chosen to be. If that soul wanted to maintain that frequency, they'd stay in spirit, or they'd go somewhere else that had a lot higher vibration than what earth does. But
Okay.
because they've chosen to come to earth for whatever reason that may be for them, then yeah, there's this understanding and this awareness that they're going to go through this process of adjusting to the much denser earth energy. But as I said, it is a necessity.
Yeah, I get that. What would you say is the percentage of, newer souls coming into Earth versus like older, wiser souls? Are they about equal, or is it more of older souls coming into Earth?
It's definitely, so when I guess I see like older souls maybe in a couple of different ways. I see old earth souls, which are those souls that have been the frequent flyers to earth, the ones that have had hundreds, if not thousands, who really knows like past lives here on earth. So
Hmm.
I call them the old earth souls. So they do have wisdom, and it can be a really earthy wisdom, and that has again been curated through their lifetimes here on earth. But I've also come to understand another type of old soul, but they're not an old earth soul. So some of these souls, we're seeing this more and more with children that have never been to earth before. So I'd still class them as an old soul, because
Hmm.
they often have this degree of wisdom and maturity beyond their years. But it's not an earth type wisdom. These are the kids that look at things differently. It's like their brains are wired differently, and they can sometimes really struggle to understand the earth ways because they haven't been here before. They don't understand the the earth like culture or ways of doing things or concepts. And so these are the kids that can really struggle, and I guess we can call them like new earth souls, and that they haven't been to earth before. But from a soul perspective, when I tune into these souls, they have incarnated before, but to other places other than earth, other planets, other star systems, other places that the soul can go to learn and grow and do its things, and I guess gain different experiences. So, and I would say, like, you know, probably 5 years ago, I'd say that like probably 90% of the souls coming through were these old earth souls. They're the souls that most of us are in this current generation of adults, are more like the
Hmm.
old earth souls. There's a few exceptions, But yeah, 5 years ago, I'd say like 90% of babies coming through, they'd been to Earth before, they knew the drill, they knew how it worked. Whereas what I'm finding these days is that it's probably more like 50-50 or maybe like 60-40, of 60% like the old Earth souls, and like, 40% or maybe that 50% of souls who haven't come to Earth before, but they're still old souls, but yeah, just in a different way. And it's rare, I have to say, to have like what I sense as young souls like coming to Earth,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there is, when you're making a leap to Earth, because I feel it is, I mean, not that I've seen all these other places where we incarnate, I've sort of had a glimpse of a few, but I, from my understanding and sort of what they've shared with me, coming to Earth is one of the more dense and more challenging places to incarnate as a soul. So, and again, in my experience doing this work, I haven't had a lot of like new souls or sort of young souls coming, because it's like going straight from birth to university, as opposed to
Mm,
going to like kindergarten and primary school and these
right.
sorts of things first, to be able to prepare for university. So yeah, so that's how I see it, at least, or what I've sort of been shown and yeah, seen, I guess, with these souls that are coming.
So it sounds like there are souls who are very wise and had a lot of earth experiences, and then this the other end of the spectrum where the soul is more galactic, has more
Yeah.
galactic wisdom, I guess. So
Yes.
when you connect with these two types of different souls, how does that feel for you? What's the difference in energy and frequency?
Yeah, well, it was when I was still working in the hospital that I was caring for a baby who was very premature, I think maybe around 28 weeks, which, in an ICU, that's quite common.
Right.
Um, and I remember going to this baby, and it was a little boy, and I was like going to care for him, and I was going to, give him a little clean and, wipe his face and, change his nappy or, his diaper and, all of these things that we do for these babies. And I remember like opening the doors to the cot, the little like armholes, and putting my hands in, and immediately pulled my hands out, because it was an energy that I hadn't felt before. And it was a very, I don't know, this like the energy that was coming off this baby was like almost like a humming sound. It was like a different vibration. The energy was very still. Um, which is unusual for babies. Generally they're wriggling and they're moving, but there was like a stillness about this baby's energy field. I mean, the baby was healthy as far as a baby born at 28 weeks goes. It's not like they had an infection or anything else that
Mm-hmm.
would give me a reason to think that their energy would be that still. And there was a very deep sense of peace that, again, I don't often feel from babies, because they're like, oh my God, I've just like landed in this crazy
Yeah,
place.
what's happening to
There's
me?
Yeah, exactly. This process of adjustment. But it was like this soul is almost like this baby's like energy was in like a meditative state. That's how it felt to me. And it just felt very different. It felt more it felt a lot stronger. It felt quite like, even, well, to me it was confronting. It was almost like this wall of energy, and it didn't feel like a baby's energy. Like usually with a baby's energy, their crown chakra is very active, and
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot energetically in their energy field below that. Their chakras are all there, but
Right,
they haven't really started to do much yet.
right.
It's, for me, it's all about the crown chakra, like energetically when I sense the energy field. And this baby's crown chakra was open, but so was this baby's heart chakra as well. And it was just like, which again was confusing to me, because I'm not used to, you can definitely feel energy in a baby's heart chakra, but this was bigger than
Mm.
expected. So the energy field itself felt different. And it was like, for myself personally, it was just like going somewhere new. It's like when it's almost like going to this is probably a strange analogy, but what comes to mind is it's like going to a shop that you've never been to before. You may have like walked past it, you may have heard other people going there. So it's not like you didn't know it was there, because I knew that these babies were out there and these babies were coming, but it just, the energy felt so different. And that was what sort of caught me first. Like the energy was just felt very different to the usual baby that I'd worked with. And because I'd worked with like over 7,000 babies by this point,
Wow.
so I was kind of used to how their energy felt. And even though, of
Mm-hmm.
course, there's variations between each one, just like there are with adults, there's, you start to learn, I guess, what's fairly standard or normal. Whereas this one was, yeah, just completely different. And I remember thinking, wow, I don't even know how to communicate with this child or how to connect with them. But they actually communicated like telepathically really clearly. And it was, I'm new here, like I haven't been to Earth before. This is a different experience for me. I'm excited to be here. But the energy was saying something different. It's like, I guess, those people that we come across that say, I'm so happy to be here, but they're like, they speak in monotone and
Oh,
their
oh yeah.
face is very like, they're sort of non-expressive. It's
Right.
like their body language doesn't quite match what they're saying, or their energy doesn't quite match.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it felt with this baby. But there was like, just what I remember is like this deep piece of, they weren't at that time anyway, even though they were in an ICU unit and their body was like a third of the size that it normally would be. Yeah, there was just like a complete, yeah, peace and surrender, and almost this sense of awe too, like, oh wow, like I made it, like I got here. And they weren't at all concerned that they were 12 weeks early.
Right.
But then if you've never been to Earth before, what have you got to sort of compare, right? I remember it so clearly in my mind, even though that would have been back in probably 2017 from memory. So it was a while ago, but yeah, it's still really clear to me just because it was so different. And there's been a lot more since then as well. There's more galactic energies that come through
Mm-hmm.
that can be very, very good communicators, often better than the old Earth souls with their, at least telepathically, very, very good in that way. But yeah, there's just something a little bit you know,
Different.
different, a little bit strange, a little bit like weird, if you want to put judgments onto it or labels onto it. But yeah, compared to other energies, yeah, it felt like that. It felt like, oh, this is new. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do with this. But yeah, but that was the beginning of a lot more children. I mean, I'm sure there were other children before that child that have come to Earth in that way, but that
Mm-hmm.
was the first one that I had connected with or come across. So yeah.
When you say you communicate with them telepathically, when you hear them talking to you, is it your voice that's in your head or is it somebody else's voice?
Yeah, it's not my voice. So
Oh, wow.
I generally have, I think being generally quite left-brained and, used to thinking, used to using logic. When babies communicate telepathically, it's not my voice. It's not, and the way I sort of judge it is, do I know what this voice is going to say next? And when we're thinking, like when we're in our own mind and we're thinking about things, we know what we're thinking about, right? We know that,
Mm-hmm.
we might be thinking about what we need to do today. So our mind will go into like, I need to walk the dog, I need to do 4 hours worth of work, I need to, whatever it may be. So you learn to think, I think, and a big part of this process for me has been learning about my own thoughts and how my own mind works, and then having like that deeper awareness around that and what my own thoughts sound like and how the direction my brain goes. It makes it so much easier for me when I'm having these communication experiences with these babies. It sounds completely different to me. So sometimes it's not even words. Sometimes I feel like they're like dropping me or giving me a concept
Mm-hmm.
energetically. And it's like, it's like the old school, like zip files, someone would
Right.
send you a zip file and you have to double click on it and open it.
Yep.
And then the documents or the graphics or images,
Yep.
whatever, would come out of that. But with other babies, it can be a conversation like we're having now. But when I tune into that, I don't know what they're going to say next. I don't know, even like word by word. We can
Mm,
think, oh, this is how we create sentences, and this is how, for me anyway, like the English language generally unfolds in
right.
a conversation. But with these experiences, there's no predictability there for me anyway. Like I can be listening and I'm like, I have no idea what they're going to say next. I don't know what the next word's going to be. I don't know what they're going to talk about. And to me, that's a very different experience to my own thoughts when
Right.
I know, often, our thoughts are on repeat, right? And we often think
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. So and it just sounds different. It kind of, they put words together in a way, or use words that I wouldn't normally use as a human, or in a way that I wouldn't normally use them. So that's how I know that it's not me making stuff up, because I thought that for a long time. I'm my own biggest skeptic with all this work. But yeah, that's how I've learned to really decipher between, yeah, what's my thoughts and going around in my head,
Mm-hmm.
um, versus, and even my own intuition as well. That's another thing. But even I've learned how my intuition communicates with me, which is still different to how, yeah, souls communicate with me. And it depends. Like I also get a very strong direction. So when with my own thoughts, it feels very heady, like very much
Mm-hmm.
like
Mental.
the thoughts are coming from my mind.
Right.
But when I communicate with babies, it's like it's coming towards my head, comes in through my left side, like the left side of my head and ear. So when I feel the words coming from that direction, then that's also another way I can decipher. It's like, oh, this is not me
Mm-hmm.
talking or me thinking. This is coming from elsewhere. It's coming from outside of me.
I want to move on to soul agreements. When a mother, a mother who's expecting a baby and she has a miscarriage, right? So the baby has decided to not incarnate and he has decided to leave. However, when it comes to termination of pregnancies, is that different in any way where the mother makes the choice to terminate, but the baby still wants to come? So is there like a some sort of conflict in agreement from your perspective?
Um, I've never had that, and I've worked with many women who have terminated their pregnancies for whatever reason. And their biggest fear that they have is, does my baby hate me? Or, there's can be a lot of guilt around that, and all of that. But in my experience doing this work, and when we tune into these babies and look, each situation is slightly different. But the general themes that I find with termination is, yes, it was mum's decision to decide, whereas with a miscarriage, as you mentioned, it's the baby's decision. But often with termination, well, always with termination, the incoming soul either is usually one of two things. One, they know that, when I look at babies coming to earth, they come in with, like all of us, we come in with different timelines, and there's different, depending on our decisions and our actions, and even other people can influence like which timeline will unfold. But with termination, like with there's like one group of babies that they come to earth knowing that termination is going to be the most likely timeline for them. For
Mm.
some babies, especially if the mum is unsure, perhaps how she feels about termination, perhaps she hasn't been in that situation before, perhaps she may have had other beliefs about not terminating before she was actually in that position herself. So when we look at the timelines and tune into those, they can be a little bit, there can be like, well, it could go this way, and mum decides, yes, I'm going to terminate this pregnancy, and and there's the end of that soul contract. Or there is, and this is like definitely the minority of cases, it can be that mum decides to, and it's often going against her own intuitive sense. There may be pressure from the partner or family or society to
Mhm.
continue with the pregnancy, but it's kind of going against something in her. Then that child, obviously will stay and be here. So that's like a smaller percentage, I would say, of termination situations. The main theme that happens, and I see this as the most common, is that the sole purpose for this baby to incarnate to earth is for the mother to be able to make the decision to terminate. So many of these babies don't, well, all of these babies in this category, when you tune into their timelines, there are no timelines beyond whatever the termination date is. You know, they haven't planned for an earth here, because a life here on earth, because they know that it's not going to happen. They know that their mother is going to terminate the pregnancy, and that's their purpose for coming. It's like their purpose for coming is for termination. You know, and that can sound a little counterintuitive, because I think we as society believe that all babies come to earth to stay. And that's not the reality, right? You know, we have many women experiencing miscarriage, termination, stillbirth, like early childhood loss, even, you know, young adults and adults
Right.
dying before they're 100, you know, in their
Right.
sleep. We have this belief that we should get to 100 and die peacefully in our sleep. Whereas that's not the reality. And so with these, the majority of these babies, they're like, there's like this soul contract. It's like, we're going to come to give you the opportunity to make this decision. Because, you know, and often it's because from past lives, perhaps the mother, for whatever reason, has been forced to continue a pregnancy, and she hasn't been able to make that decision. And, you know, and coming back in this life, where fortunately we live in times where, you know, most women are able to make that decision now about their body and whether to continue or discontinue the pregnancy. And so these babies are like, no, I'm going to come and I'm going to give you the opportunity. And it's a really beautiful, loving, selfless act to be that soul that can help that woman to go on that journey, or make that decision, or take that step of growth and healing. You know, it's a beautiful soul that comes in and puts their hand up and says, I'll do it. I'll be that one. It's not that, you know, it can often be too that, you know, for that particular point in time, that's the contract. You know, sometimes that soul can return later, or perhaps with a different partner. But what, you know, from the baby's perspective, it also gives them an opportunity to just come and experience Earth. And regardless of the circumstances around termination, I've not once, working with thousands of women, had a baby say, that shouldn't have happened, or I resent you, or you shouldn't have made that decision, or you made the wrong decision. Like, I've never, like, not even once has that ever come up. What comes up is, I feel so sad that you're beating yourself up about this, and that you think that that you've hurt me, or that you have like stopped my life, or you have I'm sad that you think that I hate you, or that I have anger towards you, or that I resent you for your decision. I've never ever had that come up, which can give so much relief to these women, and they can finally stop beating themselves up about a decision that on the soul level was the right decision. Because I don't believe that as souls here on earth that we have that power to you know, if a soul is not ready to leave the earth yet, that I don't believe we as humans have that power to send them
will
off
it.
planet,
Yeah.
you know, to you know, because it is like, I think there's so much more going on. There's a much bigger picture, and we can't, it's not that easy, you know. And you know, and unless, you know, I very much believe that each soul has their own autonomy and free will. And yes, that can influence each other, but I still, like, I've never come across anyway of a baby soul leaving the earth at the wrong time, or, you know, it can happen. It can at times happen unexpectedly, but that's because there's been a change of mind, or a new decision made by that baby normally. Or it can seem unexpected. I do see this happen in birth a little bit. And then they can suddenly decide, no, this is not the life I had planned. Then I'm leaving, or this. Yeah. So I mean, they're all very, individual situations. But yeah, I hope that helps to answer or
Oh
give some
yeah,
light around the situation with termination, because it is something that a lot of women are really concerned and hold a lot of shame about.
right. At which point does the baby's soul enter the body? Is it at conception, gestation, or just prior to the mother giving birth?
Again, in my experience, it's at conception.
Okay.
And this goes for IVF as well, which can bring up a lot of really interesting situations when we're like freezing embryos and creating different embryos at once. But that's like a whole different topic. But yeah, generally, well, in my experience, there's always a soul connected um to the embryo from conception. Because in my experience, it's not possible to, and I can only say this from what I've experienced. Obviously, I haven't looked at all
Hmm.
the billions of people on the planet, but yeah, in my experience, like there needs to be a soul connected to the body for life, like to as that life force or as that
Oh yeah.
yeah that connection. So yeah, if in my experience it happens at the moment of conception, there will be a soul connected to that body, to that embryo, yeah,
Okay.
at that time.
And where do the baby souls hang out in the cosmos?
Yeah. Before conception, you mean? Like before they've
Yep.
conceived? Yeah, it can be anywhere. Like I find that when babies are planning a life here on Earth, they're often hang out quite close, actually, like location wise. They're often in the mother's energy field, the partner's energy field, sometimes sibling energy fields. If there's like older children, sometimes if there's past life connections there, I'll find the baby's soul in the older children's energy field. Have had times where it's been hovering around the pets for whatever
Oh,
reason, but
wow.
generally it's the majority of the time they're in the woman's or the mother to be's energy field. Um, and then but they sort of again they come and go from that as well. It's not like they're there all the time, but if we want to communicate with them, generally that's where they're going to be. In other times, like I have had different more spiritual and cosmic experience where I do get a sense of a space in the cosmos that does in many ways. It reminds me of it's like a nursery in the sky. And I've been there in many different like galactic journeys and even in dreams and meditations where I've gone to this space where it feels very familiar to me, and I feel like that's where I hang out like between lives. But it's like literally like a nursery in the sky where there's a lot of different beings and light beings, energy beings who are helping to prepare souls to have a life here on earth. And yeah, there's lots of tend to see souls before they incarnate as little flames or little like balls of light or energy.
Hmm.
And I sense a lot of, even as I sort of tune into that space now, like I can sense a lot of these different energies kind of like hanging out there. It's a sense of like there's a lot of anticipation, there's a lot of excitement, but also it's a place of deep like introspection and reflection and preparation. Again, it's like, when we're preparing to go somewhere on a holiday, where we need to plan what we need to pack, and we need to make sure we
Hmm.
have our travel insurance and our flights booked and our accommodation sorted. So there's a lot of that, I guess, logistical side. So I sense that same sort of energy, even though they're not planning those things. It's like a different plan. But I sense that similar sort of energy from this place, like this, what I just call like a nursery in the sky. And they sort of then go from there, and then near there's like this portal, and I've literally seen souls kind of almost like step off the edge, and then as their conception window or their conception portal opens,
Uh-huh.
they step into that
Wow.
portal. So anyway, that's I guess how it looks to me. That's my experience of it. I guess others may have different experiences, but yeah, that's something that's never changed for me over the years, is this like conception portal, or like this nursery in the sky, as I call it.
Wow, there's so much happening on so many levels that we don't know about, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, now I want to shift to your business. What programs and services do you offer the collective at this time?
Yeah, so until now, like my main services have been baby soul readings. So it's where we tune into a baby soul, and it doesn't matter whether they are in spirit or whether they're earth side. I work with many women who are trying to conceive. Perhaps there's been, unexplained, infertility issues
Mm-hmm.
or, things like that. IVF. Um, so when we can tap into the souls of those babies who are yet to come, we can gain a lot of information. But the readings cover, yeah, the whole spectrum. So even with a baby in spirit, we can learn more about their earth side journey too, and what they're
Mm-hmm.
needing for their life here on earth, as well as children who are already here and how we can best support them, as well as preparing for birth. So the readings sort of will, wherever a woman is at, like on their motherhood journey, will meet them there. So that's the main offering that I have. I offer them over Zoom and also via email, text message if it's just like a quick question that someone wants the answer to. And I also offer baby soul healings as well. So often when we do a reading, there can be different blockages that come up, whether physical, emotional, energetic, past life, karmic, like all of these different things. So if that comes up in a reading, then we can go on and do in person or remote. I do them mostly remote these days, like an energy healing session
Mm-hmm.
where all of the guides, is like we assemble this team together to kind of work energetically with your energy field and your body to help shift some of this stuff.
Right.
um, so they've been the main things to date, but I'm also just starting to offer group programs, because what I'm finding is that, especially women, well, all of us, but especially women are very intuitive. And I believe that everyone has the ability to connect with their own baby soul. So
Mm-hmm.
now I'm moving more into teaching women that, so they don't need to come and see me. They
Okay.
can like tune into their own baby soul and, yeah, and understand or gain insight for their own journey, again, whether their baby's still in spirit or whether earthside. It's a very similar way of connecting. It's like that soul connection. I've already done like one program, so like the next program will be next month in May, to help women connect and communicate with their own babies. And it's a very experiential experience. Like, I don't believe in just like sitting here and like sharing all this information. It needs to be like experiencing
Right.
that process and that connection.
Right.
So we do that on the call. So yeah, so
Wonderful.
they're the main ways to work with me at this stage.
And I understand you have a very special essential oil that you're also selling. Can you share more?
Yeah, so I do have an essential oil blend. It sort of came through intuitively for me a couple of years ago. I call it a baby's soul balance. So it's 100% pure and organic essential oils. Like, I've sort of sourced oils from all over the world to get these really pure, high vibrational plant oils. And what it's designed for, so the oils that I've used are to support the nervous system, to support the throat chakra, the
Mm-hmm.
crown chakra, and digestion, which are a lot of the common areas I find where babies can quite quickly develop blockages or issues when they're first arriving or landing here on earth. A lot of babies might have feeding issues or sleeping issues, or
Mm-hmm.
they can be really, yeah, they don't want to sleep, or they're afraid to sleep. Their nervous system can be a bit triggered and wired. So yeah, so I developed this oil to help support babies in that transition to earth. And along with the oils, I've each each bottle that I create, I energize it like in my hands. So I set a strong intention around who is going to be receiving this bottle. And I can even feel the energy coming through my hands as I talk about it. And I infuse like a very specific energy into that oil to support that specific baby or that
Mm-hmm.
specific mother baby combination. Which adds another like dimension or level to the blend beyond the physical. It really
Right.
brings in that soul and the energetic side as well. So yeah, so I have those available, but now I'm starting to energize them individually as the orders come through so that I can
Okay.
have a little bit more intentionality around like who it's for, and the issues that that baby and that mother may be having. So yeah, so that's been a fairly recent in the last couple of years addition, but it's something that can be really powerful for helping babies sleep better, feed better, move energy through their body better, adjust easier to being in a body after being a soul and spirit. So yeah.
Wonderful. And I understand you have a special gift for our audience.
Yes, so I am offering 10% off the baby soul readings that I do by email. So those are done remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And also 10% off the Zoom readings as well, which is like a 1 hour session over Zoom.
Okay.
So Priscilla will put that code like in the show notes for you to
Yep.
use. So that will be just valid for 30 days following the release of the episode. It's available for the first 10 people who book in a session. So if you do feel called to that or you're intrigued, feel free to reach out.
We have a couple minutes left, so I'll ask you my signature closing question. What is your closing message for humanity to help in our collective healing and empowerment?
Yes, so I feel very drawn to that collective healing part of that statement that you've made, and my deepest wish is that we as the current humans here on earth can really open our mind and broaden our horizons and our awareness around the wisdom and the insights and the guidance and the changes that this next generation has to offer. And may we see that in them from the moment they're born, and may we acknowledge that and respect that and nurture that throughout their journeys so that they can come here and do what they're here to do with creating changes in these systems and these institutions that are no longer working for these children, and parenting them in more unique ways and educating them in unique ways, and allowing them to do their work in the world, even though we may not know what that is right now. But it's just having that, seeing them for these wise, creative beings that they are.
Such a profound message. Thank you for taking the time, Lauren, to be with us today. I so appreciate you. And I would love, love, love to have you back on because this is so fascinating.
Thank you, Priscilla. It's been great to be here. Thanks for listening.
And everybody who's watching and listening, thank you for your time. And until next time, bye for now.